And welcome back to An Angel's Life of Bookish Goodness. Today we are meeting with Stacy Overby, and she is one of the poets in the Ambrosia anthology. And I have the links to the Ambrosia anthology in the comments down below. The anthology is absolutely amazing. I reviewed it about 2 weeks ago as part of the early review copies, and absolutely loved it. And I really love the fact that the poets have been kind enough to generate all of their donations. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. They're donating all of their royalties to the National Society for Prevention of Suicide. So let's go ahead and get started with Stacy. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, I live in Minnesota here with my husband and my just turned 5-year-old son. So it's been an adventure. He just started kindergarten. That's been the big news around our house, is figuring out how to do kindergarten. But he loves it, so life is good. Professionally, I'm an adolescent substance abuse counselor. So I work in a dual diagnosis program, working with teenage boys right now with substance use disorders, mental health disorders. So the whole idea of donating the royalties to the American Society for Suicide Prevention was absolutely amazing to me. It's something that I think we need a lot more resources for, and a lot more of an understanding of here's what's really going on. And they do wonderful work with that. So that was a really cool thing for me. And yeah, when I'm not doing that stuff and chasing down my 5-year-old, I'm writing, and this is probably one of the bigger projects I've been in on so far, is Ambrosia, and it was an honor to be writing with the amazing poets that are in that anthology. It was just amazing to see what they did and how it all came together to create a really cool book.
Yeah, absolutely. I made the mistake of reading it all in one day. I got sucked into it, you know, and it's such an emotional roller coaster. You know, you have everything from everyday activities turned on their head, the way that Alyssa Trivett does. And then you got your demons. Oh my gosh, your inner demons piece. I cried. I had to put it down, and I cried because I was like, I think everybody's been there, you know, to some degree or another. So it was really awesome. So what inspires your poetry?
A lot of it does come from my work. I've been doing this now for 8 years, give or take a little bit. Yeah, and the job I do is so emotionally, mentally stressful, because it's walking in, it's helping people figure out how to deal with their demons every day, you know. And when you hear story after story after story from kids about being neglected, abused, you know, parents choosing boyfriends, girlfriends, just plain walking out, I mean, just the things these kids have gone through. You know, and they're 16, and it's like, you look at these kids and go, you shouldn't have to deal with that as an adult, much less trying to figure out how to navigate that as a 16-year-old.
Yeah,
so a lot of
is hard anyway,
exactly,
emotionally.
Exactly.
And then you go and add any of that extra stuff on it.
Exactly. You know, and you know, a lot of them have mental health issues going on top of all the rest of it. A lot of the kids, right, especially right now, the kids I work with, a lot of them are pretty involved in the legal system, you know, so then they're getting the message, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you know. So a lot of that emotion, I mean, you've got to, I mean, in the position that I'm in, you've got to find healthy ways to deal with that emotion of what you're hearing. You know, you're going to end up traumatized yourself dealing with a lot of it. So that's a big piece of where that comes from and what I do with that.
And that is a really healthy outlet. I know when I was in high school, my family went through some trauma. And I go back and I read the poetry that I wrote during that time. And, you know, a lot of it, I'm like, oh, this was because of the school play, and I was stressed out because of the school play. But when you read other people, they're reading it and they're like, oh, this is like life choices, and she's, you know, it's so deep. And I'm like, nope, this was literally about the school play. But some of them, you know, I just published one on my blog Friday called Tunnels of Deception. And it was much deeper. It's digging into, you know, how teenagers see things very black and white in general. And so when you tell them that something that they're doing is bad, they internalize that as being bad. When they find out that someone has lied to them, they then question everything that anybody's ever told them, you know, and those, you know, they're still developing the layers of gray, if you will. So, yeah. And man, the emotions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, and our 16-year-old started the emotional roller coaster about 2 years ago. And our 13-year-olds were like, yeah, he's starting a little earlier. Maybe we'll be lucky and he'll end earlier. But now we know we get at least the next 2 years of testosterone-filled, emotional. Yeah.
Yes. I love all that developmental stuff that happens. You know, even with a master's degree in psychology, it's child and adolescent development was what I specialized in with it, and even understanding all of that. Okay, this is normal. This is how the development works. This is what's happening. It's like, oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna shut my office door and just hide for a little bit. Just stop for a little bit, please.
Yeah, and if they don't have a healthy outlet for those emotions. You know, I make my kids sit down and write poetry. I let them call it rap, but I'm like, you know, you seem upset. Go write about it. Go do that. And it really does help to get those feelings out, you know?
Absolutely. And there's actually, I was just reading, I think it was earlier this year, there was an article that came out in the paper here that was talking about our health system here is, one of the health systems here is doing a group where they're having people come in and they're writing poetry and things like this to try to help deal with, you know, mental health stuff, with stress, with things like that. You know, and it's a group run by one of the local hospitals, and it's channeling all of that into writing, whether it's poetry or, you know, other creative writing, stories or whatever. You know, and that's one of the things I love about poetry in a way too. Like you said, is that, you know, you wrote the one about it's the school play. No, literally, really, it's a school play, but in the style, really, with poetry, to me, the style and the way it's done is really looking at the emotion. So even though you're writing it about one thing, somebody else can read it and it connects with them on that emotional level, and they could see it as something completely different, and it still works.
Exactly. Yeah.
It still works. It still accomplishes it. I mean, it's actually, I've just started trying to work with my guys a little bit at work on writing, you know, practicing writing some poetry and trying to get to that emotional piece and things like this. And, you know, that's what we talked about is really poetry is about the emotion, you know, not necessarily about events. The events help. The events are kind of that vehicle to convey the emotion, but it's really about the emotion and trying to connect on that deeper level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also find that as a reader, for me, when I feel like the world is absolutely crap and nobody understands me, being able to read poetry and go, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that feels this way, or I'm not the only one who gets overwhelmed in crowds, or, you know, whatever the feeling that I'm feeling. You know, finding a poet that connects on those levels. You know, I think part of the reason that a lot of people end up going to suicide, choosing that route, is because they do feel like nobody understands them, nobody feels the way that they feel, and they're just a burden on everybody. But through poetry, they're able to see that they're not alone and that a lot of people feel that way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And when you add in things like the substance use and the mental health issues that tend to be the precursors to somebody thinking, at least thinking about suicide. You're talking about things that are isolating on top of all of that emotional, just whatever else is going on that's been stressing and things like this, that you've got, I mean, you're literally buried in feeling, in stress, in problems, you know, and that's really isolating. You know, so even just something like a poem that somebody can connect with to go, hey, at least somebody else feels this way. Yeah. Sometimes can be enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even, was it Mello that had the Black Cinderella Princess?
Oh, I think so.
I can't remember. There were so many good ones, but you know, it's such a unique situation in that poetry that, you know, some people will be like, oh, well, I can't connect to that, but you can still connect to having felt different because of something that you have no control over, and being able to connect to that emotional place. And then also on the flip side, you know, the positive poetry is great too. Inspirational poetry, it can help bring you out of the negative feelings and foster those positive feelings by association.
Yeah, it brings you full circle. It takes you through the dark stuff and can bring you back out into, here's a better way to, you know, here's a better way to think. Here's a, you know, here's some hope. Here's some light. Here's something to look forward to. Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, when you talk thinking suicide and stuff like that, you know, that, except what Ambrosia's supporting, you need that support. You need that something to go, there's something worth living for. There's something worth sticking through this. Right. Because that's a lot of times the first piece that's lost, that starts people down that path of at least contemplating suicide, is that level of, what's the point? What's the purpose? There's no goal. There's no hope. There's no nothing. It's dark. Where do I go? What do I do? You know, right. So if there's something that people can find that next little piece of a goal, a feeling, a bright spot somehow, that can be what pulls them out of that place. And yeah. And again, the beauty with poetry, to me, being really about the emotions, it can be just as effective for doing that as it can just letting out that darkness.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was having an interesting conversation the other day. I think it might have been with you. You were doing the poetry group for your young men. And we were talking about, gosh, like 7 years ago now, I did it with a group of inner city kids. And we were doing a program to get them off the streets and keep them safe. Yeah. During the summer. And we were looking for ways to keep them busy. I was like, well, I do creative writing stuff. I can teach that. And when we started the poetry section, they hemmed and they hawed and they hated the idea. Because, you know, it's poetry and it's emotions and, you know, we're not supposed to show those kind of thing.
Teenage boys and emotion. Oh, my God.
Yeah, right. And then when we compared it to rap and to music, you know, I love music as it is, but words in music, because it's that poetry connection again. And when you combine the words with the rhythm and the beat, that is what gives that connection to like a whole other deeper emotional level. You know what I mean?
Yep. And the really cool part is there's some really new research coming out now with dealing with trauma and some of this kind of stuff, that they're finding that the real strong beats, the drum beats and things like this, even like what you find in rap, for example, they're finding that there's actually something that happens in the brain to help start healing things like trauma when you're using those real strong rhythmic beat pieces, whether it's, you I mean, it doesn't matter what style of music it is, as long as it's got that real strong drum beat kind of rhythmic piece to it. That's the part that they're finding. And it's really cool. I don't know for sure exactly what it's doing, why it's doing it, but they know it's really effective. They're finding it's pretty effective to help with that kind of stuff, which is yet another argument for teaching kids poetry.
Yeah, definitely. And that, well, it connects to, I think, on a universal level, there's rhythms and beats in everything that we do, from our heartbeat to the rhythm of our breathing. And being able to connect those rhythms and those beats, that's all a part of emotional. When we're very emotional, whether we're angry or whether we're excited, our heartbeat increases, it gets faster. And when we need to calm down, we take deeper, slower breaths. And so there's rhythm in everything that we do. And that just helps to connect all of that together too. Yeah.
I mean, I think back when I had my son, it was a little rough there. He was a 5-pound peanut. He was tiny when he was born. Yeah. So it was a little rough at the beginning. But I mean, I think back when, when I first brought him home from the hospital and stuff, he'd get upset. And one of the easiest ways to settle him down and soothe him was cuddle him up, put his head right on my chest where he could hear my heartbeat. And, and a lot of little ones I know that trick works with, of settle him down with, let's breathe, let's listen to the heartbeat. And newborns, little babies like that, that's one of the greatest ways to soothe them.
Oh yeah. Mine, that's the only place he would sleep, is if he could hear your heartbeat. He wouldn't sleep otherwise. So we have Anais is in the chat, and she was just sharing with us that Oliver Sacks wrote about the neurology of music, that drummers literally get a high from playing. That is really cool. I had no idea that was the case.
Oh, interesting. It fits with what I know of some of that research and stuff going on. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
And that's really honestly what I love about being in psychology and doing what I do right now, is because we're learning to understand, and the technology has gotten to the point so we can start to understand how so much of this works, and starting to understand emotion and how we connect to things and how we can better take care of ourselves and how we can deal with a lot of these things.
And they're realizing that they need to stop cutting the creative programs out of school because it's causing depression in children. Just saying. Okay, so I was a total theater nerd, and I hung out with the band geeks, and we did the creative writing classes. So finding them not available for my kids is super depressing for me. Maybe that's just me. But
no kidding. Trust me, working on my master's and looking, it's in child and adolescent development. So the big piece, what we looked at was, the school piece, because with kids, from 5 to 18, roughly, school is a huge part of their day. And the research out there going, we're doing about as opposite as we should be to promote learning. It's like, really, let's think this through a little bit here. All of the research tells us having recess, having the creative writing, having the music, having the art classes, those are all things that actually make kids do better on things like math and science and English and some of those things. Like, let's think this through a little bit here, shall we?
Put the programs back. Yeah. And when we're at a point where people are having such difficulty communicating with each other and talking with each other, poetry and creative writing and things like that help you connect, even if you're different politics or different religions or all these things that people are using to divide. Poetry and music and creative brings people together. It's always been a huge part of culture for a reason.
Absolutely it does. And that's the beauty of it, because again, it goes beyond those things that we want to try to find the differences, find how people are not like us. And it goes into more of that heart of, to me, what a human being is. You know, and that emotional and that piece that, you know what, we are all way more alike than we are different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Joshua Robertson, hi Josh. He's sharing some really interesting stuff that I wanted to add in on the panel. He's saying that a lot of the problems that we're seeing in kids, even in school, is that they keep cutting programs that build right brain functioning. This is where empathy and emotional expression stabilization come from.
Yep.
When you cut art, recess, etc., kids are more likely to bully, lack empathy, and not understand their own emotions, which means that they can't regulate.
Absolutely. And actually, for work, I just about 2 weeks ago finished trauma certification. And one of the things they're finding with that goes along with what Joshua brought up is that lack of right brain development also leads to higher likelihood of traumatization when there are difficult events that happen, and a much worse way of being able to deal with it. Kids can't, when those events do happen, their reactions are a lot worse than they would be had you developed that right brain functioning. And that's the beauty of stuff like this, is that it goes past that logic, reason, kind of those, what we think of as those left brain functioning things, and gets into how do we connect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left. And do we have any questions from the audience about Ambrosia, about poetry, about Stacy? We'll throw that out there for everybody. And we'll give them a few minutes to think about questions.
That sounds good.
So from Ambrosia, where are you going now? What are your future plans for publishing?
Well, I'm hoping by this spring, knock on wood, if everything cooperates, which, you know, when you work with teenagers and you have a 5-year-old, cooperation is a valuable commodity, shall we say. If everything cooperates, I'm hoping to have a dark fantasy poetry chapbook come out this spring. I'm working on the final pieces of that, which is kind of a mix of both classical poetry forms and free verse. I've been working with a couple awesome people online, Eric Keizer being one of them, and the mastermind behind Ambrosia.
Yes.
Practicing, learning some things, getting some feedback, and hopefully going to have that out in the spring if I can get everything to cooperate. Let's see, what else have I got going on? Our Right Side is going to have their fall anthology coming out in October, and I have probably one of my longer short stories in there called Through the Gates of Hell.
Mirror and Thorns?
Yep, Mirror and Thorns. The anthology is called Mirror and Thorns. I've gotten a sneak peek of the cover, and oh my God, I am so in love with that cover. It is so cool.
Yeah, I got a sneak peek of it too.
Yeah. I don't know for sure who else is in it. I know of at least one other person that I know had their story accepted in it, and he is an amazing author. So I fully expect that anthology to be a really cool anthology as well. I think that's the big things going on at the moment. One day I'd like to have my novel published, but, you know, that means I have to actually work on it, and, well, you know, time, and I think I have to sleep once in a while.
Yeah. Well, but, you know, it's easier now that your little one's in school, right?
Yep. It does make it easier in a way. But yeah, so the tough part
letting go is hard. I know. I remember I was a mess when my youngest. I did okay with my oldest because like he was totally ready for school and he was excited. He didn't even turn around. Like after I said, okay, have a great day, he was just gone. I didn't exist anymore. But my youngest was like, why do I have to go to school? I don't want to go to school. I can already read. I don't need to go to school. It was so hard making him go.
I can understand that. Yeah, no, mine was fine. I took him to kindergarten roundup, and they were going to take all the kids out of the gym to go do something else while they went over all the boring policy stuff with parents. And he gets up, stands in line, you know, gets up and runs over to get in line when it's his turn. And as they start to take him out of the gym, he turns around and he waves at me, "Bye, Mom!" And off he goes. And he was 4 at the time. And well, I guess you're ready for kindergarten. Took him his first day, and in he went, no problem. You know, if he would, he was a little bit intimidated, I think, because he's just not used to being in a big, that's a big school for a 5-year-old, and I think there's what, almost 800 kids in his elementary school. It's crazy. I think he was a little intimidated by the size, but other than that, he just walked in and, okay, we're good. Life is good.
Yep.
Walking home the first day from school, he goes, I don't want to go home. I want to stay at school.
Oh, that's awesome. It's good that he's enjoying it. Sure.
Oh, yeah. So it has made getting him to school a whole lot easier than having to fight him for it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Fighting kids with school is never fun.
No.
Well, so we're getting a resounding request for you to read one of your poems.
Oh, my.
Do you have one in front of you?
Give me half a second here, and I will pull up. And I think I'm going to be mean and pull up Inner Demons.
That's not mean. That's brilliant.
I'm just going to
sit here and cry quietly while you read.
And what I want to say before I start reading it is that this is actually the first half. There is a second half to this poem in the book, but I'm not going to read that one. You have to get the book to find the other half. Well, my computer, there we go. I say, well, my computer decides it's going to pull it up. Oh, this one, and I want to say this one is definitely one that came directly out of my work with my teenage boys. It's kind of, what's the best way to put it? It's my interpretation of what I hear them talk about on a regular basis. Whispers hiss, burning in my mind. So alone, such a burden, so much pain. Little mouths gnaw, chewing away at who I am. Loser, weakling, worthless liar. An infection of self-doubt festers. You spreading slowly. You won't succeed. Why even try? You don't deserve it. The simple answer stares, waiting, begging in silence. You'll feel better. Just one more time. You know you love me. Like I said, that's one that's I hear. I said my interpretation of what I hear from these kids. Pretty much every day.
Sorry, I'm trying not to cry. It is, yeah, definitely reading the next one makes it better, but that one was hard.
And that's, like I said, that's why, a big reason why I write, because that's the things I hear. I mean, it's, what do you say when you have a kid come, you're talking to a kid, and we're doing an exercise on, let's talk about, some background stuff. What's your earliest memory? And you have a kid tell you, yeah, my earliest memory is my mom doing lines off the counter while she made us dinner. What do you say to that? And that's the kind of stuff they live with. And part of why I wanted to write what I did, and some of the things I did include in Ambrosia, and why it is so fitting for all the proceeds to be donated to the American Society for the Prevention of Suicide, is that these things need a voice.
Yeah.
These issues going on, these things need a voice, and these things need to be heard, because all too often people blow it off with kids. Oh, they're just being a teenager. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
No, it is. It's huge. And if we don't figure out what to do with it and how to do something different and teach these kids how to do something different, what are we going to be left with?
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I just realized that I didn't include the link to Ambrosia, but I will put that in the comments down below. But it is on pre-order through September 16th. And then it goes live. And they are having a Facebook party on the 15th through the 19th, I believe. All you do is search Ambrosia Anthology, and it will come up in Facebook. And I will try to add the link to that in the description as well so that you guys can see that. And again, 100% of the royalties are going to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So it's a great series, and bring your tissues and be prepared to laugh in public, because I did that on the bus and Phillip, so.
Hey, you know,
it's a great emotional roller coaster.
Yep.
It goes from all ends. It's really amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate having me on here and doing this with Ambrosia. It's more than anything, I want to see this one succeed because of where we're sending the money and what it is supporting.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming out, Stacy. Go have fun with your family for the rest of the day, and I'm sure we will see you at more of the stops on the tour. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.